Become a member on Patreon and support Beyond the Forbidden to watch this full-length interview. With your membership, you will have access to a vast archive of full-length, ad-free interviews, face-to-face interviews, bonus shows, and much more. So what the hell are you waiting for? The link is in the description.
But I feel, Stan, it's important to discuss and document, some of your older material on my show. But I also want to bring it up to speed with what's going on today with UFO disclosure and what's going on. Is there a false flag coming with the alien deception? And of course, we will bring not just some of your older material into the forefront, but we'll bring some nuances, what's going on with the field of ufology and UFOs and all that also. But yeah, a good chunk of my audience is younger, and most of them, or some of them, may not have heard of Stan Deyo, So I guess, you're not, of course I know who you are, but to the ones, the younger generations out there that maybe listen to this don't know who Stan Deyo is. Explain a little bit about yourself and what sparked your interest in this and what led to all these years of research, in this path you've been on.
Well, at one time I attended the Air Force Academy as a cadet in Colorado Springs. I've also been trained in and used 7 computer languages with IBM. Have operated, programmed systems designed for these systems since 1968, I think it is. So I'm an old timer in the game, but definitely very computer literate. I've written a couple of books, The Cosmic Conspiracy, The Vindicator Scrolls, and then several papers which are available on my shopping cart on the inertial nature of gravity and magnetism and that sort of thing. I was recruited in 1972 to join Dr. Edward Teller's project down in Australia. At the time I was living in Dallas. And it was to join them in developing flying saucers, basically. I was putting in a patent about to submit it, and excuse me.
Oh, it's okay.
She didn't catch it. Anyway, lost my train of thought where I was there on that.
You said something about a patent?
Yeah, I'd filed a patent there, or I was filing the patent about making an ionized plasma gas flying saucer, and to use this, ionized gas envelope to fly this thing very fast. And before I got it filed in Washington, and I don't know how they knew, I was approached by Dr. Teller's people, and they said, "Oh, look, we understand you're working on this." Really? And we'd like for you to join our project. And in fact, that was quite an interesting thing. I'll tell you that in a second. But I went down there and worked on the project for a while, left the project got closed down. I was, because of the way that it closed down and how I left, I left with classified knowledge. And the United States government took away my passport and citizenship and isolated me in Australia. They didn't kill me, but they, put me down there. And there was, 2 or 3 intelligence agencies that chased me for a while in the desert there. One of them actually caught me, but that's, kind of where I started becoming public is after I left the organization. I went to Perth, did a TV program on a UFO documentary called UFOs Are Here. And I was on the program with Steven Spielberg and a lot of the notables in the situation, in the UFO situation. And because of that show, I was allowed the last 25 minutes of the hour and a half to be my discussion of where I'd been with Dr. Keller's group of what we were developing and about aliens, that kind of thing. Because of that, I was asked to write a book, and not being really a writer, I did my best, but the book sold well, 300,000 copies or so in about 27 countries. And President Clinton had it in his library, and so did his Secretary of Defense. What was his name? I don't remember. Anyway,
Are you
They
talking
had,
about the Cosmic Conspiracy book?
yeah, the Cosmic Conspiracy book.
Mhm.
The I can see the guy's face because he was my mentor for a long time behind the scenes. Jim Schlesinger, Secretary of Defense under Clinton, they came down and passed word to me in Australia when they were visiting over on the East Coast, and told me they had a copy of the book in the Department of Defense and in the Clinton cabinet. Prince Charles, now King Charles, had one, and he and his father shared of the Cosmic Conspiracy in their library. So it influenced a number of people, and Jim Schlesinger told a civilian who was using in Australia to tell me these things, tell Stan that we have his book there and that his plan, what he outlined as far as what we're doing with the UFO situation, is correct. And he says,
Mm.
I can't tell you any more than that because I'm, covered by security and clearances and all that stuff. He said, but what Stan has said in that book will answer your questions. That's what you need to know. So anyway, um, all right. So wrote a couple of books. Did maybe let's see, 3 television documentaries, maybe 4. A movie on Tesla, Nikola Tesla history research. I went to Belgrade to behind the Iron Curtain and was let into his personal belongings and letters and stuff there in Belgrade in the museum upstairs under lock and key. They wouldn't let me write anything, but I could remember all I could, come out with the knowledge of that. That was quite good, actually. And I've probably done 600 or 700 interviews like yours here over the last 20 years or so. I'm self-educated in marine architecture um, and plasma physics. Oh, a number of other things too. I forget now. There have been so many of them. But I've also done the Indiana Jones Act. I went over to the Middle East to Israel, and I met the actual guy that Spielberg, one of his writers, worked for this guy. He was an Indiana Jones type. His actual name was Jones,
Mm.
and we used to call him Windy Jones because he would pass gas sometimes in the digs. But the incident you saw in the early Indiana Jones movies, where a big rolling stone came down after Indy Jones down this shaft,
Yeah.
that actually happened to Wendell Jones. His real name is Wendell, and so anyway, he'd given me a map to some digs he'd done over there and discovered something, a secret chamber and stuff that was down in the Qumran next to the Kibbutz Kalia at a cave called the Wadi Hakipa. And so I went there, saw some very interesting things, and then over to Northeast Africa, to Tanzania, to discover the Garden of Eden. I've also done a lot of study in the geology of the planet, how the planet used to be 25% smaller than it is now, and that there was a sudden slowing of the spin of it, and so it expanded to where it is now and split Pangea apart. So you had continents instead of one landmass. And I used that to find Atlantis in Saudi Arabia. So it's been a busy life. I'm probably leaving out a number of things. If you go to standeyo.com, and at the very bottom of the page, you'll see a thing that says Stan's bio or something like that. Yeah, Stan's bio. And you click on that, it'll take you over all sorts of stuff, which is reasonably interesting. But I do have a new model. Well, I've found the model for how gravity works. And in so doing, I found out that gravity is not a one directional force, it's an oscillating force, in, out with spin. So anywhere you have spin in mass, you're going to have waves go out into the ether space, into the fine structure, and reflect back. Things that spin that fast, they encapsulate themselves with virtually no energy loss. That's how an atom stays together. And applying that model to the Earth, what would happen is if you were to drill a hole from the surface of Earth all the way down to the core, and then drop a stone. Well, the stone would start to fall down as you would expect, but then it will reach a point under the crust of the earth that it will slow down, stop, come back up, and oscillate back and forth until it finds a neutral point where the wave of inertia from the earth spinning in space would balance between the reflected wave and the wave coming out of the earth. and they form kind of like a standing wave. And we're on one of those standing waves here on the surface of Earth. That's why when you throw things up in the air, they fall down because they're being pushed down and not being balanced by a reflected pulse until much lower beneath the crust. Under this model, you can have vacant shells within the Earth. And in those shells, I suppose you can have mass like we've got here on the surface of the Earth. I mean, they've discovered great, huge lake underneath the Earth in one of those pockets. So I think that Admiral Byrd, at least his story, was correct about encountering a living civilization underneath the crust of the Earth or inside the crust of the Earth. The Earth is not solid. There are these concentric shells formed by the inertial gravity waves. And you'll probably hear more about that one of these days when physics catches up with what's really happening. And so if Schaefer talked about that and he saw people or civilization there, it's quite possible that he did do that. I do not poo-poo anybody that says about hollow Earth, because Earth has shells, and within those shells you can have atmosphere and all those kind of things. So it's not totally hollow, but it has shells. And in fact, NASA's exploration of the moon here last 5 or 6 years, no, even further back than that, I think, where they measured the shock waves, the sound waves on the moon when they crashed one of the pieces of the spacecraft that was left in orbit. They crashed it down, and it made the moon ring. Now they've done 2 experiments of this that we know about, but
Wasn't that like in '09, the most recent one, or 10, something like that?
Chapel Bell, was that the one called Chapel
Maybe,
Bell?
maybe.
Yeah. Well, anyway, what happened was that the Earth rang for 30 minutes. In one case, it rang for an hour. It continued to reverberate as though it were hollow. And as far as we can determine, that the outer shell of the moon is maybe 20 miles deep at most, and there's something inside there, maybe other concentric circles. In my study of gravity with the waveforms, you have to have spin, as I said, and spinning space itself like a fluid. It spins out of the equator, it goes into the polar regions and down to the center, hits itself, and comes back out and do it again like a breaststroke in each hemisphere. You'll find evidence of this in Mars. At the polar regions, you'll see evidence of spiral deposits around there. And as a planet or any kind of orbital thing like that ages, its diameter starts to increase until it throws off a shell, and another until it's dissipated. As it's doing that, like Earth, the polar regions will become thinner, and you'll see them get hotter as the thinness is allowing some of the heat of the inner planet to escape. And that's happened here in the last 8 years here on Earth. The North Pole was getting warmer. They couldn't explain why. And it was because the Earth was thinning at that point. The gravitational field was opening just slightly. And when Byrd went over it, it opened enough that he could fly into it at the South Pole. But yeah, hollow Earth. I think that we got to look at the fact that there are living beings of some sort underneath the crust of the Earth, and perhaps go on.
And within this discussion, a lot of this may get brought back to the we may kind of go back and forth, because what we may be talking about or will be talking about, it may correspond, with some of the things with Hollow Earth and things that may be living down there, that we may be talking about. But before we move forward with the moon, how come? What's the delay? They keep pushing these moon missions back every couple of years. It seems you always have the promise, we're going to go to the moon this such and such date, and I remember hearing that several times since I can remember, but they keep pushing it off. But yet they say they had the technology. We had the technology, if you believe we went to the moon, the Apollo days, but we don't have the technology now. What's the dilemma here, Stan?
I think it's a number of things, because behind the scenes, at least since I've been involved in 1972, we have had meetings, Earth people have, with extraterrestrials, and they might be interdimensional as well. If you look at the parallel universe and the whole universe as we know it being a virtual simulation, and when you when you look at it from that viewpoint, the technology that we used for the moon landing and several trips during the Apollo series was the height of the technology, other than the instrumentation, the engines and stuff that they optimized from the German V2. The technology for communications and that kind of stuff was a Z40 chip. And it's a very small little computer chip like that you have to write in machine language to even do it. At that time, it was the height of our technology. And with that crude thing, we went to the moon and back. Now, I've talked to a number of people involved in the space program. Some of the physicists involved. One lady, in fact, it was able to save one of the Apollo missions that was going to slingshot off of the sun, off of the moon by accident, and they changed their gravitational equation to real time to get it back home. So I talked with her about this, and the technology was minimal at that time. It was really a gamble, and we had people on the ground and crews that crewed these expeditions to the moon and to orbit that were real men. You know, they were the right stuff. They'd take the risk, the gamble. I mean, as one of them said, you know, how do you feel when you're on top of a rocket with a million moving parts made by the lowest bidder? What's going to go wrong? What could go wrong? Now, the funding for that is a political decision. It always has been. And they were trying to justify in Congress why they should spend any more money to go to the moon. It was just a dusty ball up there, and you know, blah blah blah. Do we have the technology today? Yes, we have even better technology, much better than we had then, and we could put a crew up there and not have to wait, you know, several days for them to get up there and swing around orbit. You can just zip up and zip back.
do,
That's with
do
this
you
new
think we were
technology.
warned off? Do you think we're warned off to go back to the moon, or what?
Possibly, I've heard that rumor. I understand that there are, you know, as I say, our project interacted with them, and our project included Russia, Germany, Great Britain, Norway, Australia, New Zealand. We all had scientists involved in this global participation with these what are really fallen angels or fallen ones from the parallel world that you know, God lives in. I know that sounds a bit Bible stuff, but it's what's really happened. And the Bible tells it in Bible speak, but I'm telling you in physics that we have a parallel universe, and that there has been a war going on out there that's being brought back down to earth for the completion for the last battles, of which the Bible calls the Battle of Armageddon. So we are in that situation, facing technology that is now beyond what we have been able to develop in these caverns and stuff with these aliens that quote unquote alien extraterrestrials. We developed by giving them the space and the infrastructure to build and research technology they wanted to for this battle they're going to fight. And in the late 70s, when they were through with us and they had advanced their physical presence here, the technology to the point they could build these weapons and make a fight with, you know, the creator when that day comes. They didn't need us anymore. And so in the late 70s, humans were kicked out of these bases. We had been gracious enough to give them this technology and stuff in return for anti-gravity and medicine and, you know, nuclear mechanics, you know, the using of very small particles to achieve things like, you know, walking through a wall without damaging your body and stuff like that. We had all these things that we exchanged, which to us were magnificent things. To them, they were just a, you know, throwaway piece of technology. But they've gone way beyond that now. And so when we were kicked out in the late 70s, we then could no longer share with their advanced technology. And any of the UFOs or flying saucers or tic tacs or things flying now are probably mostly from these extraterrestrials that were here before they joined with us and are here after we parted ways in the 70s. And there's a big game plan to this. Everybody's wondering about disclosure. In my opinion, it could have happened 50 years ago, but they decided it wasn't the right time. These global planners. Here's the story. Mankind, we are kind of collateral damage in this war in the heavens that's being fought there and being brought down here. The Bible speaks of a great deception to humanity coming toward the end of the age. And that great deception is going to fool even the very elect believers, if such were possible. It's not going to be possible, probably because they're going to be raptured off before it happens. But for the people of earth that aren't familiar with the biblical prophecies, or don't even believe them, the the world is about to come to a crisis here, or probably in the Middle East, where a nuclear device will be exploded, probably over Damascus. And there will be an immediate panic among all the nations of the world because the thing with Israel will escalate to the surrounding nations should a nuke be used. It'll be driving the world to the brink of destruction by nuclear war. And that'll get the attention of the people, not necessarily the leadership of countries, because that they don't count. It's the people, the masses, supporting this new world order to be established by the extraterrestrials, and they'll appoint a human or a group of humans to run it. But this deception has been going for probably millennia. It's gotten intense now because we have abductions that are documented. We have film of these things flying around and all kinds of news that tells us they're here. And so it in this deception, we have all the bad aliens that are abducting and prodding and poking people and killing cattle and that kind of stuff. And then on the other hand, we're hoping for good guys out there. And if you saw the movie or the series V, you'll see how they come posing as friends to exchange technology with us for water and things like that. Well, this is going to be more extreme than that, but there's going to be quote unquote good aliens arrive and be disclosed. They've been here, the ones that call themselves the good ones, and they are going to get rid of, say, the tall and short gray critters that were hurting people. Those are nothing more than biological robots, but the insectoid type things, all these critters will be, rushed away from the planet, and they'll say, we're going to protect you now with people that look like us, these Nordic looking, taller, handsomer type humans, but they're really going to be extraterrestrial. And in the briefings I had down in Australia when I was down with the Tellers Project, they said that these tall Nordic people, that if you look at their back of their hand in the sunlight, the right angle, it would look like rainbows, like an oil slick on it because of the gill or the scale structure on their hands. Anyway, these people are going to be disclosed now to stop a nuclear war planet-wide. When people are frightened to death because economies are failing, because politics are screwed in every country, they can't trust their governments. There's a loss of faith. In fact, there's a report at the United Nations about how many nations of the United Nations have ongoing civil unrest against their governments. And over 70% of the nations in the world are having uprisings against their government, meetings, protests, whatever. And at this point in time, and the threat of nuclear annihilation, the people of Earth could very well follow this new world order because they need somebody to help them. And they're not going to be forced into it. They're just going to be asked, look, you want us to step in and help you and show you how to have a peaceful planet? And on the surface, it sounds great. But beneath it all is going to be AI supercomputers running the world, you know, digital money, so that if you earn money or spend it in any way, it'll be a matter of public record, or at least their record in their computers. And even though we'll have a human running this organization with the help of their technology, they're still going to be behind it all, as they have been for generations now. So this is where we are now. This disclosure project, I kind of chuckle when I see some new announcement. Oh, it looks like they're going to tell the truth now. Oh yeah, right. It's what they want you to hear to get you, to want the new world order to form under these friendly aliens, to get rid of all the bad guys. And there will be a promise when this happens that the extraterrestrials will get rid of, one way or another, the Illuminati, all these banks and other consortiums. And so for the people that don't know better but are aware of this, they'll say, oh, yippee, we've gotten rid of the bad guys, the Illuminati, the bankers, and everything that have been, deceiving us for generations. And people will cheer that don't know better. But this is going to happen. The Illuminists are going to get their day. They won't be happy with it. And that's going to happen shortly. It might be in the next 2-3 years that it will happen. And I think disclosure precedes that, because we have to have that new world order run by a human, but under the guidance and protection of the extraterrestrials.
With all the
That's what we're doing.
craziness and chaos that's going on in the world today and years preceding this, you there? There we go.
Yep. Yep.
And it seemed like just things just keep get ramped up year by year. Do you think that with all the things that's going on, with the current affairs of the world, the current state of the world today, that they're trying to where do you think that that's where they're going to bring this alien deception about? Maybe Project Bluebeam, or roll this type of technology out to pose as the savior? Like, well, what exactly? Because I know you have talked about the alien deception. I've had many other researchers, like L.A. Marzulli, Fritz Springmeier on the show, just to name a few. Even Daryl Sims has talked about it before. But what's your, I guess, your definition of the alien deception, and when and or how do you think they will roll this out? Because it seemed like it might be a part of the plan, especially with all this nonsense that's going on in DC.
Well, don't forget the Middle East and Ukraine
Yeah.
and Taiwan.
Hmm.
Uh, they'll roll this out when the world looks like it's going to implode. That war is going to break out all over the planet, and with thousands of nuclear bombs around the planet, that we're going to wipe ourselves out. And that's when they're going to offer their help. Um, I suspect that this will happen. Probably start it in the Middle East. They will make themselves known publicly, and they can do it like in the movie V. They can be over major cities with a mile-wide spaceship, and break into broadcasts everywhere in different languages.
Don't forget about Childhood's End, Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. And by doing this, and by maybe a nuclear bomb going off in Damascus, where there are 10 Iranian missile storage sites, that's very probable. To quieten the fears of all the nations of the earth, the people primarily, they will say, "Look, we can show you how we can turn off nuclear weapons." They've done this. They proved it at some of the Air Force bases here in North America, where they fly over and
Maelstrom.
Maelstrom, yeah,
Yeah.
and they turn them off, and so they can say, "Look, here's how we did it there, and we can do this all over the planet. We can turn off all the nuclear weapons, and therefore you're safe." Wow, great stuff. And then they'll say something like, Jesus was one of our guys. In fact, would you like to see videos of the crucifixion? We were there, and show you that. There'll be a number of technological um, tricks or exhibits, I suppose, that will be done to impress the people, the natives of the planet here, into who these guys are, what technology they have, and how good it is that they're offering us a platform for the planet, how we can have peace with our environment, with each other. It's going to be, on the surface, it will be like, you know, uh, spaceman messiahs, elder brother messiahs from other planets and stuff, and it will not fit the model that we've been taught in the Bible, and to some degree in the Quran, and definitely in the Hindu faith. There have been all these things that have brought forward knowledge of man's interaction with gods or angels or messengers, whatever we want to call them in each language. And they will approach it, though, from a purely secular point of view, and that the gods, little g gods, are nothing more than advanced humans, advanced technology, and they're here to help you. Uh, You know, I think President Reagan said at the United Nations once, he said, sometimes he thinks that wouldn't it be great if all the warring nations of the world were faced with an invasion of little green men to frighten them into working together to defeat a common enemy. And it's like when you were kids, if you had brothers and you slept in the same room and you were fighting at night before going to bed, and Dad would yell, "Stop the noise, stop the fighting," and you'd keep on going, nickel, 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 until all of a sudden the door to your bedroom would go like this, and into the smoke cloud would come Dad saying, if you don't stop, it's the belt. And suddenly you and your brother that are fighting about really nothing will be friends and go to sleep and be peaceful. And that's on a global scale what Reagan was talking about. And that's the way it's going to play out very shortly. I probably have the advantage over you in that I nearly died in 1969, left my body, went out there. And so, I know that we live with a human-like form once we leave this body. And it's you're
Human-like
in,
form in the astral
yeah,
sense, or
arms,
physical?
legs,
Physical.
physical, yeah.
Okay.
And there is that light out there, at the end of the tunnel, that you try to approach. But I did more than that. I talked with a being that I heard, who's kind of spatially was behind my right ear somewhere. And I asked questions about the universe, how it worked, how the flying saucers work, what's the purpose of all this. I asked a lot of questions and got told a lot of answers. But when I came back into the body, I didn't want to come back, but I had to come back apparently. And the knowledge, a lot of the knowledge that I had out there, I was holding it in my mind. It was huge. My mind out of the body was huge. You could feel it. But when it went back into the body, it was like going into a shoe size. It was too small, and over the sides of the body, being a shoe, fell the knowledge of all these other questions I asked, and they were answered. But they came back, like you were talking about, in dreams, and they would come usually between 5 in the morning, wherever it was, and 6, and they would be real 3D things. You could feel temperature, see color, smell smells. It
If
was real.
I don't mean to interrupt. If I had to guess, it was around that time, roughly between 4 and
Yeah,
6, between
yeah.
between 4 or
So
7 6.
And after I came back from that experience, let's say I wasn't going to church at the time. I'd been raised in a Christian home, but kind of much like yourself, I thought, well, okay, yeah, let's go to church every Sunday, and that's it, and big deal. Until I had that near-death experience, then things changed immediately. My overall objective in life changed immediately. Instead of wanting to be a rich man, by the time I was 30 and stuff like that, that wasn't important any longer. There were many other things that were important about the the world and people and what all this was set together to do. And after I started having those dreams, which was in from 1969 to 1972, when I was down in Australia finally, it wasn't until I was in the desert about to die from one of these intelligent agencies trying to kill me, that sitting in the front of a car headlights out there in the middle of the desert, I thought, gee, I'm about to probably die one way or another. And you get, right personal with that thought. And you think, well, gee, God, if you're listening here, hey, let's be friends. I want to be on your team. Yeah, I know I haven't read the Bible that much and stuff, but if you could see your way fit, I'd certainly like to be on your team. And if I'm going to die shortly, I think that's probably where I'd like to go. Now, that was a prayer in front of my headlights of my old timey, it was a Australian car, like a Ford kind of like thing. Anyway, from that moment forward, then it wasn't a matter of going to church. It was a matter of believing and reading and understanding while this was happening. And um, uh, into my life came people with books and information and teaching from various religions that taught me more about the nature of God and this creation that we're in. Miracles happened. I mean, within 2 days of that prayer in front of the headlights, miraculous things started to happen to me and my traveling companions on the way to Perth, and we were out there in the middle of the Nullarbor Desert. I was protected by an assassin that identified himself from the Vatican. He was a Jesuit priest, a hitman in essence, and in the middle of the desert at dark, and he comes upon you and tells you he's sent to kill you. He knows your real name and all your personal details, and you think this is it. He says, "I'm going to let you go," and he went on ahead to Perth. All these kind of little miracles happen, and as my life progressed, more and more miracles and more reach out into leadership of countries and to people, and from a position of just being, a guy interested in these kind of things. Now, I'm not trying to tell you one way or another how you got to think. I'm just telling you how I think. And you know, when I pray, occasionally I pray to Jesus, but because I know where he is, time travel exists at a different rate than it does here. He told us when he left the planet, he said, I'm going to leave the Holy Spirit with you to inhabit your body, to comfort you in your time of need. Now, why is this? As your atoms become more energetic, as they are spun up, if you wish, uh, time for you passes at a different rate than it does for people whose atoms haven't been spun up. Example, UFO, South America, a three-man team of South American soldiers on a base. They see a light come down outside at night and into the field out on the edge of the base. They are sent out to investigate it. They go out, the three of them, and they separate and come back. One guy is missing. Suddenly he comes stumbling out of the underbrush, and he has a 5-day growth of beard, and his watch is at a different time. And he had walked up into the edge of a white light that was in the field. And so the energy density was passed to his molecules as he walked into the field, so that he started to live faster than his mates did. And he lived 5 days and 15 minutes. Now, we are here living at our energy density on Earth. So the Bible says that 1,000 years of our time, we're living fast by comparison, is as a day with God. Now, that's kind of a simile type thing. It wasn't the actual 1,000 to 1 or whatever ratio, but it means that the passage of events which create time, the illusion of time, where God is, where Jesus is now residing, is different to us. So for us to try to communicate with him, when to him, say in a day, 1,000 years have gone by here, well, we're sending up messages, you know, which in his time would be a million millionth of a second or something, that somebody wants something to get through. That's why he left this communicator within the whole body of believers, what he called the bride, because that services real time, because it's here with us in our energy density. Now, this is important because the flying saucers that people have seen, like that the sergeant there in the South American story I just told you, time passes at a different rate. You're standing here at night and you see a bright ball of light zig 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 off in the distance. And you think, wow, that's a UFO. What is if the UFO is one of our craft that has got this electrogravitic field? Time passes at a different rate inside that craft when you go to turn corners, because you can store the energy in the field and then vector it to a different direction. This is why so many reports of the UFOs say, well, they do like short jumps, straight lines. They don't do a curve. It's either we're at this energy density inside the craft, or we're at a different one when we turn the corner. On the Earth, as we look at them turning a corner, we see that bright light go zip that quick. On board, they're in a field, electrogravitic field, and all their molecules, craft and them and everything, are at a different rate of time passage, because the vibrational rate, if you wish, of their atoms is different. And they can have a cup of coffee and play a game of cards while they are turning that corner. To them, they spend many, many more times spinning, going around that corner than you do looking at them going flash, flash. You'll see a burst of energy as they change their energy density and throw off part of the field, and then they're gone in a flash. That's why they travel straight lines, is because it's a pain in the neck to do a curve like that, and have this altering of time inside the thing, inside the craft. Tic Tac, or yeah, Tic Tac, I guess. The recently released naval footages, everybody is raving about this top-looking thing that's got this white glow around it and a black center, and it looks kind of like a top, and it moves sideways like that while it's actually going in that direction. They were using thermal cameras, thermal imaging, and so in the thermal image, what you saw of that spacecraft or aircraft, whatever it was at the center of it was dark, i.e., it was cold. It wasn't emitting, white or infrared energy. It comes as white. But yet around that top shaped thing was this glowing white field. It was a thin field, but it was still hotter than the core. In the picture, what you're looking at was at near freezing, at like 32 degrees Fahrenheit or even less. Now, that's because of the way that energy is exchanged between the outside of the field and the inside vortex. And as I say, time passes at a different rate. It passes faster for you inside that craft when you've energized it to turn corners. When you're in straight travel, you can pass. You can be at real time with what Earth is experiencing if you want to. So the Einstein paradox about twins. One aging at a different rate, and then the other one's traveling speed of light. You don't have to travel in a direction at the speed of light. The oscillations, the vibrations of your atoms have to be faster than your twin brother, and you will age at a different rate.
But yeah, we just got to keep pushing on. Many of
Yeah.
people's done it way before me. you know.
Yeah, I remember those days. It's a long time ago, but I remember that sleep was precious.
Oh man, it's not as
Uh,
bad as it was whenever she was the first. I would say 6 months, but sometimes it gets to me because sometimes I don't know, just life gets in the way, doing things, and then I don't know, just and then she had COVID. I didn't know babies could get COVID. She had COVID last week, something like that, and
oh
just
wow.
waking up every couple hours just with a little low grade fever. But she was okay, just real fussy and waking up, periodically throughout the night. But something I was wanting to ask you, Stan. So about DC, and so I don't. First off, I don't trust what is going on with the current affairs of UFO slash alien disclosure. That Washington D.C. and other bigwig political figureheads are trying to bring to the table. Because to me, Stan, I'm a bit skeptical. I have always been a skeptical person, especially when it involves bureaucrats in DC, because these globalist talking heads always have some alternative motive, up their sleeve. It's one big game, and they wish to steer the narrative and shape public perception to whatever their sinister agenda is. And
You're
as the
so
late
right.
and as the
Yes.
late George Carlin once said, it's a big club, and you aren't in it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's them and us, and they. I mean, to a certain degree, I've said this before. If I were in charge of, say, the United States, the president or whatever, um, and there were a threat coming that would be a life extinction event, maybe, would I, in good conscience, say to the public, "Oh, look, we could be wiped out by this asteroid. It's so big, it's coming this way, and if it does hit the planet, all life as you know it will be over. And you might as well bend over and kiss it goodbye." Well, that would create, you know, anarchy in the streets, people trying to grab what resources they could to survive. So I wouldn't tell the people. I would invent other causes to get people to prepare for such an event without knowing what the real event is. A case in point, climate change. Climate change is a normal function on the planet due to the energy output levels of the sun. All the planets in our system suffer from energy coming from the sun or benefit from it or whatever. When the sun is starting to misbehave, what it's doing, it has been leading this way for the last 30 or 40 years. In fact, even longer now. The Russians figured out that the sun had already burned up half of its hydrogen supply of fuel. So what happens after that? Does it go to a helium reaction or whatever? If they were to come out and tell you, look, climate change is going to be climate catastrophe. We are going to see severe weather. The planet may actually invert, and we'll be bombarded with ultraviolet as the magnetic poles weaken. Uh, you know, good luck. They're not going to tell you that. They're going to tell you, okay, it's cow gas, it's car, emissions, it's all kinds of things that are possibly controllable by humans. And they would say, okay, well, we need to get together and work on this. And they would be preparing things, like in some cases, like freeze-dried food and seed banks and whatever, in anticipation of this event that they're going to get through, rather than panicking in the streets and killing each other. You've got to hold civilization together while you prepare for what's happening. Now, throw into the mix extraterrestrials that come and say, look, here's what's really happening to your government. And you don't want to alarm your people, but we'll help you through this. So if you were that leader, you would see why they're the them and us platforms, because those in charge of running the ship can't always tell you what's ahead, because for your own good, you'll react badly. And in some cases, they don't know what's ahead. And, you have to project confidence and security to your people. And so I play that mind game. I mean, Einstein introduces to that thing with his theory of relativity and elevators and trains and stuff like that. You put yourself in that position and say, what would I do? Rather than complain about them holding back information, what would cause you to hold back information logically? And when you do it that way, you can see, okay, they're in a tight spot. Sure, some of them are rich and some of them are very conceited, and powerful, but they have this problem. And this has been the reason that several presidents have said, when I get in office, I'm going to tell you the things about the UFO. I'm going to blow the whistle on it. They get in and they're like a puppy. Well, yeah, no, couldn't find the reports that we wanted, and it's because they've been told, do you want to be the president that announces to the world we've got all this, creates anarchy and destroys the world? Or do you want to be the president that cooperates with us toward a peaceful approach to that problem and creating environments that will allow a large number of the population of Earth to survive what is coming? Do you want to keep order or do you want to destroy order? And so, will your legacy be good or bad? And when they approach it that way, most of the presidents are egotistical. That's how they got to the office. They think they're pretty good. And so they would say, yeah, look, I don't want to be painted bad in history. I want my museum to reflect that I did the right thing. And so they can do the carrot and the stick thing to the presidents, and that's why they back off. And to prime ministers and other people that have said they were going to blow the lid on it, when they see the whole game plan and the logic about preserving as much of humanity as they can by not telling the truth, or at least not now, then you can see why they do this. It's not all of them are evil people. There are some very bright and caring people that have come in the last 40, 50 years to the knowledge of this and have willfully held it back from the people for our own good. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yes, I just don't think I think of it like this, Dan. I don't who are they to answer for everybody though? Because just I don't really agree with the Brookings report where I don't know, what was it the 70s or something like that, 60s or 70s when it came out, stating that, that basically, with this aspect of it, that there would be panic. I don't think it would be panic. It's just like you can't pacify the world or the nation. You you got to throw everything out there.
Mi-
I believe in full transparency though. You know,
Michael, look at COVID. Uh, there was a shortage of toilet paper. Did you see the toilet paper riots in various supermarkets as people went to get their toilet paper? So they're all right during COVID.
yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
and now, of course, you're seeing riots in the streets over the situation in Israel and the Gaza, and to a degree over Ukraine as well. People react badly. They have a lynch mob mentality, and when you say that people shouldn't hold back stuff, if you're going to destroy civilization by telling them what's happening when you have an armed population like we've got, do you think that would be wise?
Like, what all do you think that they have though?
Oh, a lot, a lot, a
Because
lot of
because
technology.
I guess it depends on what they had. You know what I mean? Like, it really depends on what they had.
If they're
Now,
going to,
what
sorry,
what what I'm saying, Stan, is mostly the government's disclosure, like saying yes, this exists. That I'm not saying possibly like throwing things out there to the public that could jeopardize maybe national security or a terrorist somebody could get a hold of. Like, I'm not saying quite open source all the technology, at least not yet. Yes, because a lot of things probably could cause panic, but
yeah,
at least open acknowledgement on some variables and aspects of the phenomenon.
Wouldn't you do that gradually rather than today it's this way and tomorrow your whole world is upside down because aliens are here, they're everywhere?
People just
Wouldn't
think
you?
of it. People just think of it as Hollywood science fiction, though.
That's what Hollywood has been used for,
Mm-hmm.
to generally raise the public awareness of they could be friendly and they could be bad, but let's look at the good side. And once Hollywood has shown you of these various technologies and ideologies that went with them, then is a point in time where you can say, let us disclose more of their presence. You don't just throw it out there that they're here to help us through what's going to happen on the sun, but they're here to help us. So you don't tell everything. And you gradually get all the nations together to confront a common threat, which is the sun itself, but the aliens as well. And they turn out to be friendly, or at least on the surface friendly. Um, and it just, I guess maybe you haven't done enough of that in dealing with people, but I've seen crowd mentalities do crazy things
Oh yeah,
when the, you
Black
know,
Friday, Black Friday,
yeah. Oh,
Black Friday.
yeah. Well, look, being an MP, you know what I'm talking
Oh
about.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Where I'm looking at it, Stan, is I totally get because people that listen to this show that they know I'm not quite always optimistic. I'm very optimistic, but I'm also I'm a realist too, you know. But my thing is it's just like okay, I say they I used to be part of the government, but certain figureheads, certain bad apples, these rogue factions within the government, they use the media to portray people like you and I, others listening, as conspiracy theorists and all this, and just like your job, people they tell you don't start rumors, don't do no rumors and spread gossip. Well, the boss and the bigwigs in the office that they don't give transparency. They keep everything hidden. So yes, there will be rumors and speculation and things like that. But like we do, we theorize. We theorize what's going on and this and that. And they put these labels on us like conspiracy theorists and nut jobs and all that. But we theorize and we having these discussions is because there isn't 100% full transparency. You know.
yeah, yeah.
And
It's about
if there was transparency to a degree, I'm not saying I would like at least open like verbiage from the government, that type of disclosure. Go ahead and just throw that out there,
to a
But
point, yes.
but some of the maybe the physical things.
Well, look here. Let's solve the problem this way. We are not a united planet. We have 197 nations, and they each have their own religions and politics and whatever. Until you have a global control of all the resources, the energy and the flow of energy, power, until you have control of that in one central point with the teeth to enforce it, you can't tell this part of the world or that part the secret or they're here. You create inequities. That's why they're all pushing toward this one world order. Okay. And as long as it's run by a benevolent, never failing entity, which I would consider Jesus to be, but and until that happens, I would not like to see me in charge of the world because I'm human, fallible. I have bad days, good days, and whatever. And some guy irritates me, I'm going to wipe his family out or whatever. You see what I'm saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely for humans. And at the technological edge that we're at now, what I would do if I were, part of the illuminists of this planet, planning all this, I would say, all right, let's prepare the population by leaking information to certain people to share it with the people. And if it gets out of hand, we'll disavow them as lunatics and conspiracy theorists. But if it doesn't get out of hand, we can pass through these people information that will help um, persons that don't know the whole story to prepare themselves mentally and physically for what is coming, for the conflicts and the threats. And I'm sure, I mean, you know, it's like I've had a guardian angel over me. It's probably Jim Schlesinger, the Secretary of Defense. But you don't get wiped out. You get access to information, and you get to share it as long as you don't create a panic. in sharing it. Wouldn't that be a logical way to do it?
That is, I do think that some of these technologies, I think they had the technologies to cure certain illnesses and diseases and possibly even cancers. But the
Yeah.
oligarchs want to keep that technologies to themselves so that they can sell us the treatments instead of the cures. And they keep a lot of this to themselves. The rich gets the ticket, for lack of a better phrase.
Well, I'm sure there might be a certain amount of that in play, but once
Like
they
like
have this,
some of these things, I think what needs to get released. I'm not saying of course, we're speculating because there's not full 100% full transparency, but I do
yeah,
think that there are certain things that do need to be released, though, for sure. But
that's where we parted ways, me and Teller's group. I wanted to release this technology back in 1973, and we had a big argument.
what kind of technology was that,
Oh, the
Stan?
anti-gravity, the nuclear physics at a very deep level, material physics. Um, that's what I was involved in. But then I wanted to relieve the hunger and the thirst in other countries by being able to use our craft and the technology to rapidly transport things to where they're needed to give water to these drought-stricken countries in the Sahara and whatever. And that's when I got my lecture from my control agent, Sir John Williams, and he said, "No, boy, you don't understand. You can't do that." And so I tried, and then I learned that there's probably a better reason for keeping things quiet to a degree. And disclosure, I think, that you're wanting is coming, and it's going to come in stages. Already, the Hollywood movies and stuff have been preparing people all over the world for the eventual, loss of childhood. When we go into the new world, um, and so it's not going to be too hard to convince them that reality is UFOs, extraterrestrials are our friends, and they're going to help us to order the planet, and everything will be rosy.
I guess you could look at a hot skillet being hot. The best way to learn, think of that hot skillet, I guess, like disclosure. Of course, like I said, not everything, possibly not everything be disclosed. I don't know. But think of that hot skillet as maybe disclosure. And
Yeah.
my little child in there, I tell her, don't touch that hot skillet. Me verbally telling her, don't touch that. It will hurt. That's the soft drip disclosure through film and Hollywood and through DC of verbally, me telling them drip drip that will hurt you. It will
Mhm.
hurt. But they will not know the full context of it and learn without the pacifier in the mouth, without actually. I'm not saying I want my daughter to touch it. I'm not saying that. But if she does, she will know better next time. She will
Yeah.
know, and she'll be a little bit wiser, a little bit smarter.
And learn to trust you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
like, that's kind of how I look at it, like that boiling hot skillet, steaming hot skillet could be like disclosure. But the question is, Stan, should we touch it? And should we just go ahead and boom, learn from our mistakes or learn from whatever? If there's going to be chaos, let there be chaos and just learn from that and grow from that, you know.
Look, the world is very dependent on each other, for food production, energy production, sharing, and
I love
defense.
how this conversation's going, man. It's really good. It's really good.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. We are in a state of development where the civilization can end all life on the planet,
Yeah.
or it can progress to a new happy world where everything is at peace and that kind of stuff. We're somewhere in the cusp between those two. So if you were using your hot plate analogy, if you were to allow humans to touch the hot plate now, it could be destructive to the whole process of gradually guiding the planet into a one world organism. Now, the way it's structured, like you were kind of hinting about a while ago, the elite that control the flow of all this stuff, they are at their level, and there are rules for them and there are rules for us, out of the need for structure, hierarchical structure of the human race. So it's not a bad thing. It's just that those at the center and at the very center have to be trustworthy. Earn our trust.
Become a member on Patreon and support Beyond the Forbidden to watch this full-length interview. With your membership, you will have access to a vast archive of full-length, ad-free interviews, face-to-face interviews, bonus shows, and much more. So what the hell are you waiting for? The link is in the description.